So, as a soon to be first time mom, I am doing many different things to prepare for a new person living in our home in terms of getting a nursery put together and gathering things like diapers and onesies. But another important thing that I've been doing is talking to other moms, ask about their experience, trying to find out what things like childbirth really feel like, trying to find out how does breastfeeding actually work. There are so many unknowns. And one of the interesting things that I have found in these conversations is that while there are many different ways that women experience childbirth, they all talk about how there's a lot of discomfort and pain, whether or not you have medication or not. But the women that I've talked to who have had unmedicated births, they talk about the pain as being something that, while incredibly difficult, is something that is actively moving them towards something good. And that's a different way than I've ever thought about pain before. That pain could bring us to something beautiful and wonderful. I talked to one mom who described each contraction as being an opportunity for her to meditate on her child's name. And so with each contraction, she knew she was growing ever closer to meeting this child that she has prayed for and loved for so long. And I thought about how that was such a beautiful way to think about pain and suffering. And today in our gospel lesson, we have heard a group of beautiful parishioners read the Passion of Jesus Christ for us to hear how he goes from the Garden of Gethsemane all the way to the tomb. And we hear gruesome details of how he suffered, of the pain that he endured. And I can't help but equate some of that, not exactly, but to relate some of it to the pain that I have been learning about that comes with childbirth. And there's something unique about both of these types of pain that can be difficult to see in the moment. But when we delve deep into them, what we can see is that God is so very present in both of them, right? God is right there with the mothers and the fathers going through childbirth, and God is right there with Jesus, with each step that he takes along his path to the cross, with each breath that he takes until he gives up his life in the very end. And when we think about Jesus' suffering in the same way, we can see that the suffering of Jesus was getting us to something beautiful and wonderful, but it's difficult to see when we're here on Palm Sunday with all of Holy Week facing us. And I think that also this connects deeply to what we are experiencing as a culture. Right now, we are in darkness. We feel a great deal of isolation from one another and maybe even from God. We don't know what's coming next. We have many neighbors that are suffering. Maybe even there's a great deal of suffering within our own families. And it feels like there's nothing good that could come from any of this. And it is difficult to see that any good might come, right? But what gospel lesson and our human experience in God shows us is that our suffering is never in vain. And it's not in vain because God is in the midst of it, that God suffers with us in all of it. And there is a promise. There's a promise there that God will make something good come out of it. Because if God can make something good come out of the horrible darkness of the cross, then God can make something good come out of childbirth and even this horrible pandemic that we're living in right now.